بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين أما بعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is session 10 of our study on Nahw. Today we're going to touch upon the genders of nouns. And the reason why we are touching upon this now is because if you remember the first compound based discussion that we touched upon was the Murakkab Tawsifi, the adjectival phrase, also known as Mawsuf Sifa. You can call it Murakkab Tawsifi or you can call it Mawsuf Sifa. And we said that the ruling of the Murakkab Tawsifi is that the Sifa, the adjective, is to mirror the Mawsuf, meaning that which is being described in four perspectives. We mentioned this. That the sifa is to copy the mawsuf in four ways, in four aspects. The first one being in terms of i'rab, the second one being in terms of nakyu and ma'rifa, the third one being in terms of whether it's singular, dual, or plural, and the fourth one being in terms of gender. Now, when we look at all of these, look at the first one, for example. I'rab, in terms of definition, we've defined i'rab, correct? We've defined i'rab in the first lesson when we defined nahwa. And as I've mentioned before, i'rab is a constant study within the field of nahwa. Essentially, nahwa is all about i'rab. Nahwa is all about i'rab. So we're not going to touch upon this, as in we're not going to go further onto i'rab for the sake of this discussion when it comes to the discussion of Murakkab Tawsifi. Then we have Nakyu and Ma'rifa. Now we've already touched upon Nakyu and Ma'rifa before, correct? So we don't need to touch upon this either. What we do need to touch upon is the noun in terms of it being singular, dual, or plural, and also the noun on whether it's masculine or feminine. So we're going to do that, okay? And the first one we're going to do out of the two is this one, this fourth one, the noun being masculine or feminine. Because remember, the sifa is to mirror the mawsuf in four perspectives. Now, if you can't figure out, like if you don't know whether the mawsuf, that which has been described, is masculine or feminine, how are you going to get the sifa to mirror the mawsuf? You can only get the sifa, which is the adjective, to mirror the mawsuf if you know whether the mawsuf is masculine or feminine. So that's why it's very critical that we study this now. So it makes sense as to why we're touching upon this right now. So when it comes to the genders of nouns, you have two genders. Yeah, you have the masculine gender and you have the feminine gender. The masculine gender in Arabic is referred to as mudhakkar, and the feminine gender in Arabic is referred to as mu'annath. So you have mudhakkar and you have mu'annath. Mudhakkar is a masculine based noun. Mu'annath is a feminine based noun. Now, as you can see, when it comes to the mudhakkar, the masculine based noun, there's not much discussion. We've only given an example. And the reason why we've only given an example and we have no other discussion regarding the masculine based noun, the mudhakkar, is because the default is that the noun is masculine unless proven otherwise. So if there's no reason for the noun to be feminine, then it would be masculine. Right? It's gonna. So if there's no reason for the noun to be feminine, it's going to be masculine. So the example given over here is rajulun, man. Okay. Then over here, when it comes to the feminine side, we have some branches over here. We're going to go through each one by one. You know, these three over here, these three branches, the ones that are in yellow, these are apparent signs of femininity. The apparent signs that will give away that this noun is feminine. The first one being ta'it ta'nis, what's called ta'it ta'nis, and this is this round ta over here. Example: ibnatun, ibnatun, ibnatun. From ibnun will be a feminine based noun because it's got this ta, which is referred to as ta'it ta'nis. Okay, ibnatun being daughter. Then we have as a apparent sign of a feminine based noun, we have alif maksura. Alif maksura. So alif maksura is this. You know this ya and this alif that comes on top of it. This is called alif maksura. So this ya and this alif that comes on top of it is called alif maksura. The example given for that is aswa over here. So as you can see, you have this sword, it has this ya, and then it has also this alif. So this noun has the sign of femininity, which is alif maksura. And then we have alif mamduda. Alif mamduda. Why is alif mamduda? Alif mamduda is this. You have alif, after it is a hamza, before it is a fatha. So example, hamra'u. Hamra'u. So that'll be red. So as you can see, the alif mamduda is present at the end, correct? You have a alif, after it there's a hamza, and before the alif there's a fatha. So we have three apparent signs of a feminine based noun. We have the ta'nith, which is this. We have the alif maksura, which is this. And we have the alif mamduda, which is this. The example given for ta'nith is ibnatun. Right. The example given for alif maksura is aswa, which means stick. The example given for alif mamduda is hamra'u, which means red. I should have put the definition of this. This means daughter. Daughter. I think the reason why I didn't do it is because it's too large. Well, sort that out later. And then we have another category when it comes to the feminine based nouns called mu'annasi sama'i. Or you can say mu'annasi sima'i. Both are fine. Okay, so either mu'annasi sama'i or mu'annasi sima'i. And what is this? This is when there's a noun that's feminine based, but not because of a parent sign, meaning not because of a ta'nis, not because of alif maksura, not because of a alif mamduda, but rather it's heard as being feminine, meaning the Arabs just pass it on and understand it and acknowledge it to be a feminine based noun, hence why it's feminine. So that's what's said over here, right? Feminine without any signs, used as feminine by the Arabs, and this has a set of categories, right? So you have this category, this category, this category, and this individual category over here. So we're going to go through these one by one. So let's go through this one. Any noun referring to a woman, this will be counted as mu'annasi sama'i or mu'annasi sima'i. Any noun referring to a woman, and that's pretty self-explanatory, right? A noun that is referring to a woman doesn't need a sign. Right. Example, ummun, which means mother. Hindun, which is a woman's name. Urusun, which is a bride. A bride is going to be a woman. Right. And then we have this other category, which is the names of countries. Example, Misru, which means Egypt. Right. Ashamu, which means Syria. And Hindun, which means India. Obviously, the reason why I mentioned the diacritical mark of the last letter, even though technically when you stop at the last letter of a word, then you're supposed to ideally make it into a sukun, correct? But the reason why I mentioned diacritical mark is because this is a beginner level and I want you guys to be able to identify what is the last letter's diacritical mark, because I'm not sure if it's clear enough over here. But just remember, that would be ideal. You should be just stopping with a sukun at the end and not mentioning the actual diacritical mark of the last letter. Just keep in mind why I do what I do. Okay, and the third one is the body parts that have pairs. So we have body parts, right? So body parts that have pairs will also be classed as being feminine in the Arabic language. So example, yadun, hand, rijlun, foot, aynun, eye. Okay, so these are three categories of mu'annasi sama'i or mu'annasi sima'i. And then we have this other category over here that doesn't have a name in of itself, but these are also counted as being mu'annasi sama'i or mu'annasi sima'i. So example, ardun, which means land, a harbun, which means war, a khamrun, which means alcohol, darun, which means house, or rihun, which means wind, or surqun, which means market, or shamsun, which means sun, or narun, which means fire, or nafsun, which means soul. You know, for these, if you know like the category it's in, that it's referring to a woman, or names of countries or body parts that have pairs, it's not that hard to identify these kinds of sama'i, or muannasi sima'i. But when it comes to these don't have any set, how would I call it, unique formal category by name, right? So these you will have to memorize. There's no way around it. You have to memorize these. And the consequence of not memorizing these is that, say, like you have a mawsuf, meaning that which is described as one of these, right? And keeping in mind that the sifa, the adjective, the description needs to mirror the mawsuf in four ways, one of them being in terms of gender. If you're not aware that these are classified as muannasi, sama'i, or muannasi, sima'i, then you're going to assume these are masculine. Because like we said in the beginning, that the default for a noun is that it's masculine unless proven otherwise. You're going to think it's masculine, so you're going to mirror the sifa, the adjective, as a masculine. You're going to make it into a masculine. So if you make the sifa into a masculine, this will be a grammatical error. So if you guys don't know that these are mu'annath, then the consequence is that you're going to make the sifa, if these are made into mawsuf, you're going to make the sifa into a masculine, which will be a grammatical mistake. So you need to learn these like a vocab list. Okay? There's no other way around it. You have to learn these and like a vocab list. Okay? So make sure you learn these. We have two sets of notes over here. The first one being, there are certain nouns that are still masculine despite having a ta at the end. So what we would define as a ta ta'nis, right? So you would think that because it has a ta ta'nis, it's feminine, but that's not the case. So not every single noun that has a sign of femininity, meaning a apparent sign of being feminine, is a feminine based noun. Okay, just keep that in mind. That's what he's trying to say over here. There are certain nouns that are still masculine despite having a ta at the end, because they are such nouns that refer to males. Right? So if it refers to a male, then it's going to be masculine, even though it might apparently seem like it's feminine due to it having either a ta, for example of them being Tawrafa too. Obviously, you'll say Tawrafa, but like I said before, the reason why I mentioned the last letter's diacritical mark as it is so that you know what it is, right? Tawrafa too. You would say Tawrafa, right? When you're stopping there, okay? You say Tawrafa. So it's a name of a poet. Khalifatun. Khalifatun, the leader of the Muslims. Allamatun, a very learned scholar. So this is the first note. As you can see, all of these have a ta. But don't assume just because they have a ta that it's mu'annas, it's feminine. No, these are masculine. So don't get confused by that. If the noun is not known to be feminine by any of the means mentioned above, it will be masculine.